My OBS Journey. Day 1. Ready for OBS, and reporting to school. I've with me 3 bags, a large one for clothing mostly, another bag for toiletries and sleeping gear, and a small bag for miscellaneous items like water, writing equipment and utensils. Okay. I'm at school, waiting for a bus to take me to Punggol to prepare. According to the list, I am going to Camp 1, Pulau Ubin. Nice. Bus arrived. Its number is not important, but it would be the same one to take me back to school on day 5. Cool. My group number is 8. I'm on the bus. It's kinda nice, I guess. It's a bus, not much else worth noting. We reached Punggol, but it is just a sort of covered shelter for us to, once again, wait. I need to use the toilet. Ah, I see. It is a storage container in the middle of a large open field repurposed as a toilet. Sure, works I guess. Okay, now we actually get to leave, on a boat. Didn't fall into the water, good. In the boat, good. Feel lonely, scared, excited and nervous, while watching a video about OBS and a safety video, not so good. Oh boy. We made it to Ubin Island, finally on OBS grounds. Here we go. We got off, and the place seemed amazing. On our left was Indiana, a replica of Stamford Raffles's ship, used as a high elements course. There was also a signpost pointing to all directions of all the other OB courses such as OB etc. At the bottom was an OBS sign, where we were. Way at the front was the OBS crest, bearing their slogan, to serve, to strive, and not to yield now. Time to move on with the tour. Immediately after that, we were brought to the mass hall above and all the groups were gathered there. We went through some things and were given group names. I'm in Group Barker, nice name, I guess. We also went through some icebreakers, and learned each other's names. We took a group photo and left. We went on a tour, we saw the cookhouse, a med bay, and residential quarters. We were given a dorm but we couldn't use it, and we got a store to keep belongings. We got OBS water bottles. They were not very new or clean and mostly looked like small milk jugs. That's not good, but at least they hold 2L, allegedly. We gathered tents and changed into our wet fit. At the same time, we began having our lunch. Lunch was bread and strawberry jam in small amounts. We learned about kayaks and placed our things down. We picked up some kayaks and paddles and prepared to set off. We went into the water as a group to help anyone who felt afraid to face their fears of water. We all submerged our heads and exited the water to start. On my turn, I got in a kayak and a friend and I began our journey out in the kayak. The kayaking was good. We learned some strokes, and did a seesaw water removal to drain the kayaks. We then paddled out further and proceeded to do a capsize drill, when one guy in the other kayak was afraid of the capsize drill. We went first and completed it. We then finally managed to convince our fellow friend to capsize and we completed the kayaking lesson. By then, I was starving. I saw seaweed that kind of looked delicious, not delicious enough to eat though. We had to simply wait for dinner to be prepared at the cookhouse. Alice, we finally got to eat. As the sun was slowly setting in the distance, I thought to myself, why am I here? I knew that it was bound to be a good experience, but still it hurt to be in. Unbeknownst to me, that was going to be the only meal we were served that someone else cooked. Not that the food's that good either way. On the hike back, I felt even more drained and was definitely ready to hit the hay. I thought and looked back on the day and muttered, I know in 5 days' time, I will think back to this very moment and realize how far we've come. I reached back at the campsite and ready myself for the night in the tent. I brought pajamas for sleeping in, but in that heat and lack of time, I decided that I will absolutely not be using that. 11:59 p.m. The sun was nowhere in sight, just like how the end is nowhere in sight. I couldn't sleep. Too hot, too cold, and way too many insect noises. I left the tent to check outside. Nice view, shady tree silhouettes and large bright stadium lights to illuminate the court where the staff patrol. Well, I had to sleep somehow I figured, so I headed back to camp. Hey guys, I went out for some fresh air. I'm back, I said. Whoops, wrong tent. This sure is going to be a long night. Day 2, waking up was a hassle, and my head hurts. It was basically 6 in the morning, and I sure was tired. I grabbed the hand my fellow teammate extended towards me. He then helped pull me up and out of the tent. In my tired state, all I could muster was a quick thanks, and we began our expedition. The morning was rough, but we were prepared for the day. Belaying was first on the list, and we learnt the basics. No need for more details, but the belaying went well, with us able to handle it and tackle the obstacles. We sat down for lunch and prepared for the hike that was promised to come. I slumped by the camp bags and immediately dozed off. Upon waking, I noticed that everyone was either asleep too, or eating the tortilla shells, the soft kind. Some filled it with leftover strawberry jam, others used salmon. One guy even mixed both. Gross, no thanks. Picky me would rather just eat it plain. Once lunch was done, we pulled out the U-Bahn map and looked at it. Here, to there, Camp 1 to Camp 2. Seems simple enough. What could go wrong? We set off, all 14 of us plus our instructor. We had 7 bags for 2 people's personal things, and 7 for equipment, of which 2 were food bags, 3 were for tents, 1 for cookery things, and the last for miscellaneous items. I got one of the tent bags. Lucky me, I guess? We set off on our hike, with 1 instructor, 14 students, 14 backpacks, 3 empty jerry cans to be filled up with water, and 4 random wooden poles for emergencies. We managed to use the poles as hiking sticks during our little walk, so I guess they were of some use. At the end of the walk, I could see the next campsite, an open site devoid of any human life. Looks like their groups had set off to Camp 1 already. More belaying equipment lay there, though we weren't going to use them. All I knew was that it would be dark soon, and the night promised potential for disaster. The first rule of action was to unpack the ready-to-eat food, tents and cookery with ingredients. From the commotion I heard, I assumed a disaster had already happened. I was correct in my assumption, for the strawberry jam burst, and the food bag was a huge mess. After much cleaning, the bag was not sticky and the food was salvaged. We decided it was best to leave the jam containers behind at this site. Unfortunately for us, we still needed to camp on the hillside for the night. It's covered by grass. I set a mosquito deterrent on a nearby tree stump and helped pitch the boys' tent. I looked at the cemented floor under some fans and inquired if we can just sleep on the cold, hard concrete instead, but received a negative. Well, I can't say I didn't try. By the time dinner rolled around, the dirty bag was cleaned and packed. We cooked using tablets of solid fuel and metal cook tins. Dinner was some rice and other stuff. I, being me, ate just the rice. The equipment was washed once we were done and we packed it up. I finished helping the team to pack the equipment and proceeded to walk off to the sunset. I walked to the dock to stare off into the distance of Singapore and Malaysia. The sky to my left was dark and cold night. However, the sky to my right was a bright and warm day. A testament to how OBS is partly amazing and partly terrifying. After a nice chat with a stranger while looking out into the distance, I headed back to the shelter, where the instructors already set up a nice map to explain the kayaking journey that was to befall us the next day. With a torch behind the map, they guided a path along which we would paddle to make it to KK campsite, otherwise known as a piece of U-Bahn in the middle of nowhere. We went through some briefings. If we capsize, get others to fix it. If we are tired, get our partner to take over for a while. If we are seasick, there's an orange in the food allocated. I was not really sure how the orange would help. I wondered if I should eat it, smell it, or bite at the peel, but it wasn't like I could Google it. Either way, I did not want to try to deal with an open orange peel in the kayak, so I'd smell the orange if I felt ill and hope for the best. As we were concluding the briefing, someone inquired on how we would use the bathroom. The instructor replied nonchalantly, "Get off the kayak, do your business, and get another kayak to help you get back on." We scanned his face for any sign of jokingness. He was serious. Oh. We were then told our order to wake up. My group was first. Our waking time was 4 a.m., and our group had until 4:30 to finish using the toilet and go to the kayaks. I, once again, scanned the instructor's face for any sign of jokingness. Once again, they were not kidding, and sleep loss was inevitable. X2. By now, my watch read 9:30 p.m. We had 30 minutes to shower. I, like many others, just rinsed slightly and wore the same clothes back since we were going to get into the kayak first thing the next morning. After making sure to enter the right tent, I found a nice spot among the others and rested for as much as I could. Not like 5 hours of sleep was much, but it was something at least. Day 3, and it's 4:45. Whoops, I missed the toilet break. We took the tent down and used the toilet quickly. While we walked to the kayaks, we had a small random chat and watched the night eventually turn to day. We set the kayaks as more and more people arrived to move kayaks to the shoreline. Before we set off, I had to use the bathroom. Seeing as the toilets were way too far, I settled for the next best option. Bush. As the sun made its dramatic entrance, we pushed off, kayaking out as a group. To protect the group, 4 kayaks were allocated as markers. 1 at the front, 2 at the sides, and 1 more at the back. These kayaks would ensure that our group would not break, and no one would go adrift. In actuality, I was supposed to be partnered with someone else, and be one of the 8 guardians. Someone else wanted to take that role, and I let them, feigning slight reluctance, but being secretly happy at the prospect of not having to deal with all that responsibility. We paddled for about 45 minutes until my partner, who happened to be my classmate and the front kayaker, began to feel seasick. I physically reassured them that it was all completely fine and that I would take over the paddling fully until they felt better, but internally screamed, wondering how they were already sick. The immense tiredness only fueled my drive to make it. The strokes blended together as I threw my kayaking lesson to the wind and invented different strokes for myself. I paddled relentlessly for almost 15 minutes until they continued to paddle. The entire journey followed similarly, with me being the one paddling the most and exerting the most effort while they did only about 35%. I would scold them, but honestly I was way too tired to argue, plus I enjoyed the kayaking. Overall, the kayaking went along without much excitement. There were a few keynotes though. One keynote was that we had about 2-3 rest points where we would stay still and eat, rest and chat with other kayaks. Another note was that I felt seasick a bit too at a few points, but didn't want to use the orange, and instead drank seawater. Was it a good idea? Probably not. Did it work as a temporary solution to an immediate problem? Yes. No kayak capsized, nor did anyone have to get out to use the bathroom, except me. But I didn't get out because I needed to use the bathroom. I got out because my supply bag filled with most of my food fell out and was drifting away. Although we were instructed to hold on to our kayak while outside, I ignored that instruction. I was not about to lose my food. I swam out and grabbed the bag and brought it back to the kayak. As I was about ready to give up, we turned right and entered a deserted mangrove forest. Surely we would not be camping in the mangroves, right? As it turned out, no, we had just come here for our instructors to talk about mangroves. Our real destination was behind us. We had already gone past KK campsite. So we paddled for an extra 20 minutes for this? After our very nice lesson on mangrove trees, we set off to the actual place we were going to be camping at. We finally arrived at the campsite. It looks like a random island in the middle of nowhere. There were some trees, a lot of sand and the vast emptiness to keep us company. We began to seesaw the water out of the kayaks when we noticed the water in one of them was yellowish in color. It was someone's spilled chrysanthemum tea, right? Right. Whatever it was, it will be whoever next used the kayak's problem, not ours. I inquired if there was a toilet nearby. There was not. I had to just go into the shallow part of the waters and go there. Nope, I had a better solution. A simple trick up my sleeve. Bush. We had docked the kayaks at the shore, prepared for the next group to use them. We trekked further into the jungle. So this was the fabled KK campsite, huh? It looks terrible. Well, at least we would be safe from mosquitoes since I had a mosquito repellent device with me. Oh, I left it on a tree stump at Camp 2. Would we ever go back to Camp 2? No. Well, as always, we will make do. We pitched tents in a nice little spot and prepared for the day's challenges. We walked to the nearby quarry to, well, quote-unquote bathe. Some of us had salt stains on our clothing. One of us had his entire front of his pants white as snow. We walked down slippery steps and enjoyed the cool water. Looking down, all I could see was a dark and green abyss. How deep was the quarry? I don't know. Meters? A whole kilometer down? We would never know. We took a nice dip in the water and washed off all the salt and grime from the long kayaking. Barker wasn't the only one down there. A couple other groups were also present. Who knew one of the girls in the group was deathly scared of the water? Either way, she looked traumatized beyond repair after that one. As we left, I could only hope she was all right, and leave. We headed back to camp. The girls' toilet was towards the left. Ours was over the drain, By drain I meant a long river abomination of a drain almost a meter wide and deep. Yikes. We looked as we crossed carefully and saw a couple of glass bottles. Us being guys did what you'd expect boys to do with empty glass bottles and a large drain. The small glass explosions were a fun spectacle to witness. We carefully walked into the forest and saw our toilet. It was a nice little paradise to me, a piece of reality to hang on to in a shaken world. That was a joke. I was instead staring into a nice empty clearing. Branches were our hooks to hold clothes, and the trees and plants were our toilets. Oh boy, the girls must have it so much worse, that I won't lie about that. Anyways, as the few of us were changing and drying off, an onslaught of mosquitoes attacked us. Cuban mosquitoes are not to be messed with. As I removed my long-sleeved shirt to dry, 3 mosquitoes immediately swarmed my arm. I killed them. 4 more seemingly spawned out of nowhere. I reluctantly put clean clothes on, letting the little parasites be. After wearing my clean long-sleeve clothes, I rolled up my pants and exposed my leg. As expected, mosquitoes swarmed me immediately. After 5 minutes I had murdered about 20 of them. Good enough. I rolled down the pants leg and walked further in. Our instructor had said there was a toilet at the back. Someone clearly lied. Oh well, kind of funny joke. Or at least it would have been if I didn't need to use one. I think you know my solution. Bush. When I said the toilet was a nice paradise, I wasn't actually lying. I enjoyed the separation from the harsh reality outside. As I prepared to leave the toilet, I hallucinated for a moment, seeing one of those semi-fancy toilets in a place like a swimming complex. I stared and looked around for a bit before I came to my senses. Upon leaving the toilet, I walked over to the grass patch and looked at the slowly fading sky. It was already half done, just 2 more days to go. I headed to the clearing for dinner. Noodles and stuff. I ate some and gave the rest to my friend. We cleaned the equipment as best as we could. We then prepared to sleep. We pitched the tent over a tree stump since one of the boys wanted to try it as a pillow. I used my bottle as a pillow instead. Day 4. We are on sentry duty. Great. 2 a.m. and I already need to do work. I shine my torch and scan the area. We could see our OBS tents, the toilets, the instructors' hammocks, and some unidentified tents in the distance. There were also some red glowing eyes in the distance? Should I be looking at them? Note, back to sleep. I woke up again at around 7 or so, and one of our guys apparently had a bad stomach ache before we slept and blew a rip in the forest. I don't know what happened, but I hope he's alright. I didn't actually need to go number 2 the whole OBS. Maybe I didn't eat much and that's why, but whatever the reason, it was a blessing I'm absolutely going to count. Tree stump dude said it didn't feel very good, but that was expected. We removed the rain tarp from over our bags. It didn't rain, but it was a good precaution. We gathered our things and unpitched the tents. We were close, almost home free. We just had to survive 1 more day. Little did I know, it was going to be the most intense one yet. Before heading off, I visited the bush once more, and headed off from that place. The kayaks were already gone. Another group kayaked off earlier in the morning. We prepared our bottles, both filled to the top. We still had 2 giant now empty water containers and 4 pointless bamboo poles that we never even used that we needed to bring back to Camp 1. We set off on our trek. We needed to visit 5 checkpoints on the way. To spare some details, the first couple of hours was extremely painful. We only got to 1 checkpoint and still had to make it to 4 more. Along the way, we entered a little farm-like place to look around. They had all sorts of plants. It was like a maze. Lunch was just basically consuming any uneaten rations we had. I ate the loaf of bread we never ended up finishing. As the bread became more and more bland, us boys decided to chuck some flattened slices into the forest like frisbees. They disappeared into the dense void of the forest and beyond the reach of anyone. They were never seen again, but I'm sure the wildlife thanks us for the free meal. We finally found checkpoint 2 after about an hour and continued on. At times I had to carry something. The poles made for good trekking sticks and the water containers made good chairs at rest stops. We saw the grave of 2 semi-ancient important people, an electrical plant, and a lot more curiosities. We even managed to glance at another country in the vast distance. Somewhere between checkpoint 3 and 4 I found a tiny durian that I stashed in my bag to take with me. After a long trek, we saw Checkpoint 5 nearby Camp 2. This was obviously a shortened version. The whole walk took from around 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. But after the walk was over, we walked over to the entrance of home base. We were glad to be back. One of my friends got a fever and had to go to the med bay. They got medicine and a drink. Lucky him. The fever was just from the heat and he was fine after that. We were then supposed to prepare the final dinner. We got some of the finest ingredients. Garlic, oil, onions, rice, eggs, chilies, tomatoes, and much more. A chef's dream. We began the cooking with the instructors telling us a part of a story. There was once a brilliant chef. He was renowned for having the most amazing skills in the kitchen. Tirelessly, he worked for years, creating masterpieces that would be the envy of Michelin star dishes. One day, almost 30 years of being a chef, was his last day of service. But to his shock, he was not given an easy day, but instead had to prepare 100 dishes for the dinner. He was shocked, feeling disheartened. We were then told to cook for another team. We had to cook for one team and another team would cook for us. We began cooking egg fried rice but noticed the team cooking for us chopping lots of chilies even though we asked to not make it spicy. Our team was noticeably upset and wondered if cooking well was even worth it. Well, the rest of the team at least. I sat for a moment and thought to myself, the liability of having the food another group cooked for us is not one the OBS would like to take, and the story we were told must be some lesson to us. And have some underlying meaning and foreshadowing. At that moment, it all clicked to me. I told the team to cook with all we had, and that I knew what was going to happen. We gave it our all and made some nice egg fried rice and decorated it. Then, all the teams presented our dishes to everyone else. We didn't really win for best looking, but we didn't lose, so that's fine by me. After all that happened, the instructors introduced a twist and revealed the rest of the story. As the disheartened chef began to cook, he thought to himself, why should I even bother to make good food? It's my last day anyways. And so he cooked the 100 required dishes, just without the passion he used to have. The dishes weren't as good as usual. He was then asked by his boss to bring them out to the 100 guests. To his dismay, he watched as the 100 guests, which were actually all of his friends and family, were seated there, clapping and celebrating his retirement. With that plot twist, it was revealed that we had not been cooking for our other teams, but for ourselves. I stood triumphantly. I was right. We gladly enjoyed our well-cooked, love-infused meal. I also let my friend finish the food since he felt rather sick. I did enjoy the benefits of his sickness by getting to enjoy some of his can of soda the medbay gave him. We ate and enjoyed ourselves as the evening slowly rolled in. We listened to great songs like Golden Hour by Jake and Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for Fears. As dinner wrapped up, we washed the cookery for one last time and kept it back in our dorm's store. As I headed to, for the first time in a while, a regular toilet, I looked at the quote on the building. There is more in us than we know if we could be made to see it, perhaps. For the rest of our lives we will be unwilling to settle for less. Kurt Hahn. Truly, I felt that I understood that feeling. The past week of craziness, no matter if pain or pleasure, had been an invaluable learning experience. As I returned to the dorm, we sat on the floor of the dorm. We sat and cherished the final night. We shared our feelings and stories. We listened to Past Lives by Sapient Dreams as we sat together as Barker. I thought back to day one, and remembered how I knew I was going to look back on that evening. Oh, how far we've come. The final night. We pitched tents for the final time and headed to bed. One last bit, and we're done. We had done it. We survived. We had grown. We had served. We had strived. And we had not yielded. This was it. The end. Day 5, and I could not be happier to wake up. We closed up the tents and sent them back into the store. We also sent back a map and compass from day 1 that somehow played such a small role I didn't even include it in the story until right now. We washed the milk jug-looking bottles and sent them back to the store too. All of our equipment was now sent back to the store and we retrieved our belongings. We headed out of the dorm and walked down the hill till it slowly faded away. We met up at the main foyer of the OBS campus. We shared some contact details and prepared to leave, bringing this whole adventure to its inevitable closure. We stepped into the boat for the last time. We headed in and watched as Pulau Ubin disappeared into the vast distance till it had gone out of sight. We headed on through the waters till we reached the shore. We had made it back to Singapore. We did it. We then spread out and said goodbye to our instructors, and once and for all, Barker is no more. We regrouped back with schoolmates and waited for a bus to take us back. We took a bus from that Punggol shelter. It was a long journey, but we made it back to school. We were ready to finally get home. Exhausted and fulfilled, we got off the bus. We were accounted for and I made my hasty exit. I had with me one large bag of mostly laundry that needed to be cleaned, a smaller bag with some things, and the smallest for the miscellaneous stuff. I boarded a public bus and soon enough, finally made it all the way back home, my little adventure finally drawing to its satisfying close. I walked up to the front door and entered. It was finished. I made it home. Day 6? With the whole ordeal over, here's technically my day 6, even though all of this was just the finishing touches. Well, that's my whole OBS journey. The laundry was eventually sorted and things were back to usual. I had extra bandanas since most of the rest of my friends didn't want them. Their loss. I also had the Lego over rations from OBS. Simple solution for them. Bush. Just kidding. Most of them were not very good anymore and all of it was either eaten or thrown. Jumping to today, as I write the ending of this story, I have handcrafted the golden hour, a wooden knife as a memory of OBS. As for the tiny durian, I learned how to open the durian and marveled at it, the final piece to dispose of. I sent it on its way, and that was the last of it. My OBS journey had finally come to a close. The final close. Overall, my experience was just another small chapter in this giant great tangle of life. Lessons were learned, experiences gained, and potential tapped into. I had a blast, and this will likely stay with me for years to come. I would like to end off with a thank you. First, thank you to all the behind-the-scenes crew who made all OBS experiences possible. I would like to thank my friends from Barker 2023, for being there with me. Thank you too, for sharing your drink with me and more. Thank you to my kind instructor, Mr. Awaluddin, for guiding us through this experience. And to Mr. Awal, sorry if I misspelled your name, I sincerely apologize. Not to forget, thank you to my friends and family, and everyone that passed my way and shaped my paths. And lastly, thank you, dear reader, viewer, listener, or whoever you are, for hearing my story. The end.